welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn.
Ajahn.
Tell us about the Bāhitika Sutta, Majjhima number 88.
So the Bāhitika Sutta takes place in Savatī outside of Jeta's Grove. And King Pasenadi sees Venerable Ananda walking and has his minister approach Venerable Ananda and ask out of the compassion that he wait and then speak with King Pasenadi. And King Pasenadi then asks Venerable Ananda, would the Blessed One, would the Buddha do anything that other wanderers and mendicants would censure? And the commentaries say that this discourse happened during a sort of period or event that's spoken about in the commentaries where members of a rival sect, jealous of the Buddha, hired a female wanderer, Sundari, to be seen leaving the monastery where the Buddha was staying for a few nights, and then they hired others to murder her and leave her body where it would be found, so that blame would fall on the Buddha. And eventually, the truth came out and the Buddha's name was cleared. Those who were responsible were drunk and bragging about it. But just a very kind of meaningful episode in seeing that even a Buddha has to deal with the worst kinds of praise and blame and how to move through that with equipoise, of which he really encouraged all of his disciples to hold even during that period. So if the commentaries are to be believed, then King Pasenadi's question is him voicing his doubt to Venerable Ananda, would the Buddha ever do something that others would blame? Venerable Ananda says, the Buddha would never do something, the Blessed One would never do something that wise recluses and Brahmins would censure. He adds this word vinyuhi, which is left out in some of the Pali editions, but it's there in others and makes sense actually in this context. King Pasenadi says, you've answered my question just through the addition of that word, basically like wise, the wise would not blame him. And it's just a very skillful answer by Venerable Ananda. And then King Pasenadi asks, what actions would wise recluses censure? And Venerable Ananda gives several criteria. He says they censure that which is unskillful, akusala. And kusala etymologically is kusa, from kusa grass, which is a sharp kind of grass. And if you grasp it wrongly, it cut the hand. So kusala is skillfulness. They censure what is unskillful, what is blameworthy, and what leads to harm and results in suffering for oneself and others. And interestingly, I think it's really worth sort of singling this out because it's a clear demonstration of the fact that the Buddha's encouragements towards virtue and skillfulness are not these arbitrary commandments from on high. There's a clear if-then statement hidden in them. If you want to not suffer, behave in a wholesome way, because unskillful action leads directly to suffering, even if we don't always see the cause and effect chain. And the beauty of practice is you can see for yourself, when you behave unskillfully, negative effects do come and pain does come, even in the moment of the heart hurting and it intuiting the psychological damage that is resonant with this word or indicated by this word, unskillful and blameworthy. Not to mention the long-term consequences for oneself and others. So kind of a lot hidden in that line of cause and effect, from what one blames to what the wise blame to resulting in pain. And then Venerable Ananda, the king asks, does the Buddha only praise the abandonment of unskillful qualities, or does he also praise skillful qualities? Or and Venerable Ananda says he also embodies skillful qualities. So once again, Venerable Ananda changing the question's answer just a little bit to actually say it's not just that the Buddha praises these things, he embodies them. King Pasenadi's faith overflows and he offers a expensive cloak he got from elsewhere for Venerable Ananda to make a robe from, just begging him to perhaps use at least some of it for himself. And the merit can overflow because Venerable Ananda can share it with others. And then Venerable Ananda reports this to the Buddha, and the Buddha says he spoke correctly. Two things there. One is the beauty of Venerable Ananda checking his teaching with the Buddha and just making sure we're representing the Dhamma correctly, not misrepresenting it. And that's something you and I do with our teachers. And the other thing is this resonance with King Pasenadi asking that Venerable Ananda use his cloak to make a robe. Ajahn, what would you draw out of this discourse?
Just to draw out a few things. One is this elaboration of what is censurable versus what is praiseworthy. King Pasenadi asks about why is something censurable, and Ananda points to 5 aspects of an action of body, speech, or mind, which are censurable. One is to its moral aspect. Something is either akusala or kusala, which is unwholesome or wholesome. Something is either blameworthy, vajjo, it's worthy of blame, or it's anavajja. So this is like a social aspect, pointing to what these wise samanas and brahmins would censure or would praise. And yeah, that key word of wise samanas and brahmins, because there's lots of spiritual seekers, and not every goal and not every spiritual path or religious person is necessarily wise or is pointing to wise, wholesome aspects of mind. So knowing what is blameworthy by the wise and what is praiseworthy by the wise. The third aspect is it abhyabhaja? Does it lead to harm, or does it lead to health and leaning away from that which leads to harm? And then it's, does it lead to dukkha vipaka, a result in dukkha, or does it result in sukha? This is kind of a hedonic temporal. So it's not just about what's going to happen in the present moment. Is this pleasant now? But is this going to be pleasant over time, or will this cause me suffering over time? And this is a really important aspect of wisdom. The Buddha defined the wisdom faculty as, or when wants to grow in wisdom, one approaches wise people and asks, what, when I do it, will lead to my long-term welfare and happiness, not just my welfare and happiness in the present moment, which may or may not be, totally in line with what's wholesome, but over time. And then the final aspect that Ananda points to is, will it lead to the growth of what's wholesome for myself and for other people? So a developmental versus degenerative aspect that's being pointed to. And then a couple of interesting side steps that Ananda makes. The king asking, does the Buddha possess all virtues, all wholesome things? And Ananda saying that he's given up all unwholesome. So there are certain virtues in certain classes or jobs, like for an accountant, they might have certain virtues that maybe the Buddha just wasn't paying attention to. They're not essential for purifying the mind, leading towards enlightenment. So Ananda pointing to the Buddha's utter purity in those things which lead to enlightenment. And as for those virtues which maybe don't lead to enlightenment, or those things which don't lead in that direction, the Buddha is just not concerned with that type of virtue. So a really interesting line to look at there. Another is King Pasenadi's gift of cloth to Ananda. There's another case in the Vinaya, which is fascinating, where another king named Udena sees Ananda receiving a bunch of cloth. And then, initial thought is, what are you going to do with all that cloth? You're just one monk. What do you do with the uttarasanga, the upper robes, this upper robe that you wear when they start wearing out? What are you going to do with that? Asking Ananda point blank. And Ananda says, well, we'll give them to people to patch their old robes with. And then the king says, what do you do with those old patched robes when they start to wear out? And Ananda says, well, we'll make sheets out of them. And what are you going to do with the sheets when they start to run out? Well, we're going to make bed covers out of them. And what about the bed covers when they start to wear out? We're going to make floor coverings. And what about the floor coverings when they wear out? We're going to make them into doormats. When the doormats run out, we'll use them as foot wiping cloths. And when those run out, we will mix them with clay and actually kind of patch walls in a kind of stucco wall buildings with them. And Udena is very inspired and then gives another 500 sets of robes to Ananda. And you really do see this in monasteries. You go into buildings and there's all sorts of patched and repatched. We have our work sabangs, or our work clothing that we wear, which are just patched and patched again. We'll use old cloth it's just all over the place. The window coverings, window shades, certainly monasteries are very frugal places, and you see many different uses for robes, and it's inspiring to see. So, Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is evang. And I'm surprised we haven't done this one yet. It means thus, and it begins almost every discourse in the phrase, "Thus have I heard evang me sutang," said by Venerable Ananda, reporting what he heard the Buddha say. And it also can be used to say thus or yes in response to a question, but kind of a very simple but key word.
Eva metam, so it is, so it is. Well, let's practice with this, and we'll see you over on Zoom very soon, or see you next week for Majjhima 89. Ajahn.